We have a packed house today. So I'd like to call to order the King George County School Board regular meeting. So this evening we have with us the Potomac Elementary School Garden Club. So they are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. So please rise. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, please be seated. Except for the members of our garden club, we want to hear about the gardening that you're doing at Potomac.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity and good evening. I'm just going to let them tell you a little bit about what we do. So there you go.
What do we do at Potomac Garden? What do we do in Garden Club at Potomac? Well, we do many things.
We weed the gardens. It's not that fun, but it needs to be done.
We plant native plants to support the wildlife that visits the garden, mostly birds and bugs.
We plant some vegetables that are used in our cafeteria. We have different kinds of lettuce, kale, tomatoes, and cucumbers. We keep our school grounds clean by picking up trash.
We decorate our school outside this year. We made scarecrows and put them on display for all to see.
We learn a lifelong skill, identifying and caring for plants, growing our own food, and preserving the environment.
And I am Mary Ellen Arthurs, the leader of the Garden Club, 40 members strong. And this is Kelly Houlihan. She's our resource officer. And I would not be able to do this without her. And also Jerry Leisure, who couldn't be here tonight. And I also want to give a shout out to Gail. Gail is a huge supporter of our Garden Club. She just comes by, looks at the garden, but she also donates. She gave us a composter and a fig tree, which is doing really well. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. All right, at this time, we will move on into our swearing in of our new school board member. Mr. Mason, I believe, is with us.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You would raise your right hand, please. You, Catherine A. Hoover, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the King George County School Board, commencing January 1, 2023, and expiring December 31, 2023, according to the best abilities, your abilities to help you God.
I do.
You would find that there. This will be your copy. And then that one there. There's your copy with the gold seal that's suitable for framing. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mrs. Hoover. All right, next on the agenda, we have our holiday card winners. Ms. Higgins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school board. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to present our holiday card winners. Each year in King George County Schools, our art teachers graciously host a student art competition where students are able to submit original artworks to be considered for use on our division greeting card. I can't thank our art teachers enough for all of their encouragement and support of our students. As you can imagine, every year we have beautiful submissions from all of our schools. So it's certainly very difficult for the school board office staff to select art to actually be used on the cards. And this year, I am so excited to announce that both of our winners are from King George Middle School, Lillian Redmond and Jayla Brown. And if you ladies would like to come forward, we do have some recognition for you. In addition, I will share that their art teacher, Miss Fallon, is here. Hi, Lily. And as well as Miss Heim. And just a little quick story. Miss Heim is a PE teacher at King George Middle School, and she's actually Jayla's PE teacher. And because Jayla doesn't have art this semester, she's a second semester art student, Miss Heim was kind enough to help Jayla with the contest entry and to encourage her to participate. So thank you to our teachers as well as our awesome student artists. And if you ladies wouldn't mind standing up in front with our board, we're going to do a picture. I promise it'll be fast. And if your families would like to take a picture, you're welcome to as well.
Be in it? Oh, no, I don't need to be in it.
And before we are completely done with holiday art, we do have a very short video of all of the submissions because they are all very worthy of being seen tonight. So congratulations, Lily, and congratulations, Jayla. And here are all of our entries from the 2022 contest.
Mrs. Higgins. Can we get the other one?
Yes, we can ask Miss Bushrod for another
you.
copy of it. There's two cards. There's the fox from Lily, and there's the wintry lake scene from Jayla.
I love the box.
Mhm. Well, congratulations to both of you, Lillian and Jayla. They're beautiful cards. Always look forward to getting those every year. So thank you. All right. Okay. All right. And next, more awesome stuff. We have our recognition of our Teacher of the Year award.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Boyd, school board members, community members, family members, principals, assistant principals, welcome this evening. I have the distinct privilege in recognizing 6 teachers that received Recognition Teacher of the Year in their school. And tonight I'll be announcing the Division Teacher of the Year for the first time this evening. Thank you, Dr. Boyd and Ms. Rinko for helping. As I call your name, will you please come up to the front and join Dr. Boyd? King George High School is Grant Callahan. So I'm going to be reading some excerpts from the principal's letter of recommendation. Major Callahan excels in many ways, many areas. His daily actions exhibit service leadership and situational leadership at its finest. He takes great pride in providing cadets with experiences that focus on leadership training, self-confidence, communication skills, leadership opportunities, teamwork, and many other real-world skills that students can directly apply to the school setting and after they leave King George High School. He works effectively with all people, but is especially strong with making students feel connected to school. Some without NJRTC would otherwise not feel this connection. A believer in everyone, Major Callahan is dependable, forthright, honest, and one of the most caring people I know. His cadets know that he cares about them, that he listens to them, and that he wants to teach them how to become successful during and after high school. He is always willing to help with anything that needs to be done. His cadets exhibit a very high level of respect for him. Congratulations. At this time, I'd like to call up Jessica Brown from King George Middle School. She's an English teacher. From Dr. Casey Nice. In addition to being an excellent teacher, Mrs. Brown also serves as the English department chair and as an academic dean for our school. In the classroom, Mrs. Brown goes out of her way to develop positive relationships with her students. She takes time to get to know her students and to create an environment where students feel confident and safe so that they can learn to their full potential. Mrs. Brown works diligently with all of her students to help them learn the skills needed to be successful and willing learners and readers. In addition to all the roles already mentioned, Mrs. Brown is also a dedicated member of the King George Middle School Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports team. She positively impacts the lives of her students and our staff through her actions. She goes above and beyond the call of duty to help her students to be successful and is willing to think outside of the box when necessary to reach each of her students. Congratulations. Our King George Elementary School Teacher of the Year is Brianna Ashton, and she cannot be here this evening because they're having a chorus concert tonight. She's the chorus teacher, so she couldn't be here. From Assistant Principal Dan Steyer, in growing the chorus program, Ms. Ashton has increased the size of our program to approximately 60 students, far and above the size it was in the previous years. In order to improve their skills, Ms. Ashton created opportunities for these students to travel to district chorus events. To show their performance skills, the chorus is now working toward the opportunities she developed of being able to perform the national anthem at the Fred Nat Stadium in Fredericksburg in the spring 2023. Ms. Ashton provides creative and stimulating lessons for her students. She involved full body movement and physical activity as parts of her lessons. Students from kindergarten up through 5th are always happy to be in her classroom. Congratulations. From Potomac Elementary School, Jennifer Jenkins is an elementary art teacher. Mrs. Jenkins has served as an art teacher at Potomac Elementary School since August 2019. She obtained her master's in art education from Boston University and holds an instructional 1A certification in art education K through 12. Mrs. Jenkins is currently enrolled in the University of Washington's Pathways program to become a clinical faculty member in order to mentor student teachers. Since joining PES, Mrs. Jenkins has provided engaging and meaningful instruction to the students. She has facilitated artwork projects that incorporate the entire student body and staff, creating a sense of community within PES. Mrs. Jenkins supports her Potomac Elementary colleagues by finding ways to incorporate cross-curricular instruction into her art program. She collaborates with the counseling department to integrate the arts with social, emotional learning experiences as well. And that's from Melinda Brown. Congratulations. Sealston Elementary School is Amanda Morris. She's a kindergarten teacher. Mrs. Morris has the ability to inspire the love of learning in students of all backgrounds and abilities. Teaching kindergarten requires an incredible amount of joy, patience, kindness, and love. She displays all of these traits in abundance. Mrs. Morris has dedicated herself to the Sealston students. She tutors the upper grade levels during Camp Excel and serves on the division's vertical literacy team. She also taken the lead in organizing many events for her team, including field trips, egg hunts, and the kindergarten pumpkin patch. She recently completed her master's in curriculum and instruction, which will have a lasting impact on her current and future students. She always portrays a positive, nurturing demeanor that enables her students to thrive under her instruction. That's from Sandy Eli, principal. Congratulations. The preschool program, Mary Yurgi, she could not be present. She's not present with us tonight. She had a family emergency. Mary has been with our staff for several years and has brought a wealth of experience to our school. Mary is a support for all staff and always seems to have the answers for any questions you might have. She problem solves how to help her students learn more and spreads her ideas to each classroom whenever asked for help. She is always looking for resources for kids who may need supplies, food, or clothes at home. Mary collaborates with her families to help them assist their children at home. Mary is kind and thoughtful. She acknowledges staff birthdays and school appreciation days. She is a team player who manages successful relationships with her families, administration, and coworkers with ease and grace. And that's from Lori Wages, the coordinator of preschool and mandated services. So congratulations to all of you. After each school chose their teacher of the year, the King George County Teacher of the Year Selection Committee met to select one teacher who will represent King George County in Region 3 as Teacher of the Year program. As you can see, each teacher's description on the PowerPoint, the selection committee had a very challenging task as all the nominees are very truly deserving of this award. At this time, I would like to announce the King George County Schools Teacher of the Year. It is with great honor to present this year's Division Teacher of the Year award to Jennifer Jenkins. Congratulations, Ms. Jennifer Jenkins, on being selected at King George County Schools Teacher of the Year for 2024. Best wishes to you as you represent King George County Schools in Region 3 for Regional Teacher of the Year. Congratulations to all of you. You are all very well deserving.
Should we get Zoe up here?
Yeah, you can hold up your, if you can hold up your maybe certificate, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, that looks good.
Come on, Zoe. Oh, she's precious.
All right, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Congratulations all, and especially Ms. Jenkins. All right, at this time, we will move on to public and employee comment. Ms. Rinko, do we have any comments this evening? Okay. All right, Mr. Tom Crook, that's correct.
Thank you, members of the board. My name's Tom Crook, 1504 Woodstock Road, King George. I just retired after 44 years of service in the Department of Defense, and I proudly served under the flag, and we say the Pledge of Allegiance to it. I was a little surprised a short time ago, went past Sealson Elementary School. And there's a flagpole there, but no flag flying, and I was concerned. And I just think a flag is a great way to encourage citizenship, and that without a flag flying, they can't do that. So one, it's really simple. I just came here, one, to make sure the school board was aware that there's no flag flying there, and two, encourage you to do anything you can to get that resolved. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Vance, do we have any comment online? No? All right. At this time, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have one. I'd like to put on the agenda for discussion the process of us vetting entities or organizations for visiting our schools, whether it's a classroom or a school. And it would involve policies KF, KH, KJ, possibly.
And you want that on the agenda this evening?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
It would involve these right there.
I'll second.
Second. All right. Is there any discussion? I guess I have.
My concern is that I am not familiar with these policies. I have read them at one point in time, but it's been a number of years. I would have appreciated a chance to take a review. That's my
Yeah, my comment would be that it sounds like, definitely worthwhile subject to discuss. I would wonder if it wouldn't be more appropriately discussed at a future date when there's time to prepare for the conversation.
Well, I guess the reason, and I agree normally, but in the last 3 days I was trying to figure it out. 3 phone calls, 4 text messages, and 3 emails about a situation. Then I don't want to talk about the individual situation, but for the sake of the parents, it would be nice to at least discuss the process that we use for vetting and having certain entities or organization visit either a classroom or the school. And I guess because of all those, and just in the last few days, which was way beyond the time to put an agenda item, I'm not saying we need to make any decision today, but I'd like to have a discussion. And then if there does need to be a decision made, it would be in obviously January.
Okay.
Okay. I would just ask, to what extent do you want to dig into all those policies now, or are you just trying to just scratch the surface?
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we'd make any changes to those policy, but what I'm going to talk about is reflected in those policies. Does that make sense? All right.
Makes sense.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Chair votes aye. Motion carries. So we'll add that. We'll add a letter D to what was it? Policy for accessing.
For vetting entities and organizations to visit the schools.
Visitation.
Visitation, yeah.
I'll put visitation policies. Okay.
KF, KH, KJ.
And, oh, H is what I was missing. KJ.
All right. Okay. Any other changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. For the first action item, I'd like to move that to a discussion item, simply because I have some proposed edits, and I think it'd be far more efficient to treat it as a discussion item rather than as an action item, even though I anticipate vote on it tonight.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Nothing more to add.
May I ask both 2A and 2AB
No, just A.
Just A, okay, just 2A.
And I do have printouts of my proposed changes to make it easier to look at them. They're not too extensive.
So do you want to move the whole action item to discussion, like the whole policy manual update discussion, or just 2A?
I only need 2A, but if it's more convenient to move the whole thing, that's fine.
I don't know. We'll move just 2A, I suppose. That makes the most sense, I imagine. Okay, we'll add that to item E. We'll move that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right. So at this time, moving on to our consent agenda. So we have before us minutes from the October 10th, 2022 special meeting at 4:45 PM, October 10th, 2022 regular meeting minutes at 6 PM, October 10th, 2022 special meeting minutes at 7:30 PM, and October 11th, 2022 special meeting minutes at 4:45 PM. Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept all the minutes from October 10th and October 11th as presented.
We have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right. So moving on to our action items. So first in our policy manual updates, we have policy IIAB, supplementary material selection and adoption. Dr. Boyd, do you want to, any comments you'd like us to move to a motion?
I'd be happy if we move to a motion.
Okay.
Unless there's any questions.
All right. We have a motion.
I move that we accept the policy updates for IIAB, supplementary materials selection and adoption.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing this in the policy packet. Do you know what page it's on?
The policy packet.
Or I'm sorry, is that far down?
He didn't see it in the policy. So I'm in board docs. It's posted.
I'm good.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Moving on to our discussion items. So first this evening, we have the school-based health workforce grant allocation number 2. Dr. Boyd?
Yes, Madam Chair, a little background is on March 11, 2021, the President signed into law the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The act provides additional relief to address the continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy, public health, state, tribal, local, and territorial governments, individuals, and businesses. To support the governmental public health response to COVID-19, the CDC awarded funding totaling $2 billion to establish, expand, and sustain a public health workforce. As part of this grant, Virginia received $50,920 or $50,920,959. Of this amount, 25% has been designated for school-based initiatives to support school health staff. The implementation of school-based initiatives will be managed by the Virginia Department of Education, which will distribute funding to school divisions to promote school-based initiatives that support its health workforce with regards to COVID-19 prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery efforts. VDH and VDOE has identified 2 primary areas to assist in the recovery efforts for this, which are recruitment and retention of health professionals and professional and educational development of health care personnel. The department will release the workforce grants to school divisions in 2 separate disbursements. King George County Schools has been granted $49,000 in this first allocation, and the second disbursement is pending reallocation of remaining funds. These funds will be exclusively for the purposes specified above and must be encumbered by June 1st, 2023. The King George County Finance Office requires the school board's approval to create new account codes to manage these funds. My recommendation would be to approve a motion to accept $49,000 in ARP HCY funds for the purposes specified. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Are there any questions or comments for Dr. Boyd? Dr. Boyd, is this a time-sensitive matter? Would you like approval this evening, if at all possible?
I think if we could have approval this evening, it would be beneficial.
Okay. Okay. I'm willing to entertain a motion. one of my colleagues would like to put one forth.
I will move that we approve a motion to accept $49,000 in ARP-HCY funds for the purpose specified.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. All right, next on our agenda, we have a discussion regarding our school board legal representation. Mr. Rolls and Mr. Bush, I believe you wanted to see this on the discussion item agenda this evening. Would you like to discuss?
I know we had Brad King come from Sands Anderson, 2 months ago, I think, and make a presentation about what he offers. And I know that we are currently using Stacy Haney, and listen to her. I know that the cost of Brad King was more than Stacy Haney was, but I would like to see us at least for a period of time to use Brad King for several reasons. One is his number of years experience. Number two is his past experience with King George. Number three is that I think he might provide through that experience a more balanced approach to any of the things we may need to deal with within this next year. So I guess what I'm saying is, it's not that I'm saying we should make a permanent decision to go with seeking Brad King's advice at Sands Anderson, but I would like to entertain the next few times that we need advice to go to him.
Any other discussion?
I also am open to the idea of just giving Mr. King a try, since it is an hourly basis. It's not put on a retainer. It's like some sort of permanent decision. So worst case, even if we switch back to Ms. Haney eventually, we at least kind of have an idea of both. And if we ever feel like we need a second opinion on something.
Madam Chair, I'd like to know why we would want to pay a fairly substantial amount of money in addition to what we were paying for. Frankly, it sounds like that you think he has a more positive opinion to the way you think.
No, I think it's always valuable. If you looked at my background, it doesn't matter which side of things you might be on. The more information that I can gather, the more I can hear from different sides, the better. And if it has to do with lawyers, my experience in education is I loved hearing not only from, we were with Walsh Anderson in Texas. However, there were times even within Walsh Anderson, which is a gigantic organization, that I would often ask for. They assigned us 2 lawyers as an example. And there were times and those 2 lawyers generally agreed with me, but I said, I need to hear kind of the other side of what might happen with something. And so I would ask, could I speak with one of the other lawyers? I think it's always good to get a balance. And so for us to at least try for a few times and then have possibly a discussion. Do we see any differences? Are they the same? And if we don't, then I think we should save the money and go back. However, I would like the opportunity to hear an opinion of a different lawyer.
So I would like to know, you mentioned him having a more balanced approach about legal scenarios we might encounter next year. I'm curious, what is, in your opinion, not balanced at the moment, and what are the examples of things that you think he would handle more readily than Ms.
Good
Haney?
question. I guess the word I should have used is he has more experience in looking at the both sides than Ms. Haney does in terms of years and court cases and so on. Probably balanced approach was the wrong word to use. I think that both of them maybe give a balanced approach. He just has more experience doing that.
Frankly, Madam Chair, I am not sure. I can't tell you how long Stacy Haney has been our legal counsel, but she has been involved in our affairs for many, many years. Ms. Yuzurski might know. I guess Ms. Bush would probably have Dr. Bush would probably have a better idea. The other Ms.
I understand. I understand.
I just don't know why we would choose to spend more money when we are so concerned about losing teachers, and we are losing bus drivers, and we need to be giving bonuses. And why would we want to pay more for legal fees?
So I would like to ask Dr. Boyd if you have any, I guess, insight that if you care to offer on the matter, since it pertains to our legal representation.
I've worked with both of them. Stacy Haney, a little for a slightly shorter period of time. Ms. Haney has only worked with me since I've worked with King George County School Board. I've worked with Brad King over the years in Richmond County. Both of them great attorneys. I don't have any issues with working with either one of them. They've both done well with anything I've asked them in the past. So I would say they're both good.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rolls.
This is a tough question to ask on the spot, but one that comes to mind, you may not have this handy, but I wonder how recently we've done spending against our budget for legal assistance. I mean, we usually have money left over, or are we kind of stretching that?
Well, I can tell you that in fiscal year 2022, we spent $2,962.03. And that was specifically to Haney and Pack.
All right, I guess my concern, I think in alignment with Ms. Hawk, I'm not in favor of spending more just for the sake of no clear, in my opinion, in my mind, clear benefit, when our representation by Ms. Haney has been more than sufficient, in my opinion, considering we don't typically have a lot of legal needs. And I know in the past when these conversations, when I believe part of the rationale for Mr. King coming and presenting to us was, as I understood it, a desire for someone who was not a VSBA lobbyist. And I know that clearly Sands Anderson and Mr. King he was a VSBA lobbyist and clearly quite, works with VSBA, considering their firm was a presenter at the VSBA annual convention. So I myself am not in favor of making a change that is more expensive when we don't have a need for it at this point in time. But
I apologize, Madam Chair. I probably should have looked. I think that I may bring this back up in the future, only in terms of looking at the number of cases in which Dr. King, or excuse me, Brad King, I don't know whether he's a PhD or not, but in which he has done compared to Ms. Haney, because I hear what you're saying, but I think looking at education in the entire United States, we are going into an area that there will probably, and there's a good chance there might be a whole lot more litigation. I hope not, but it's always a possibility, and it would be great to have somebody with a tremendous amount of experience. But so possibly in the future, I will bring this up again, only that time I will actually have, here's the number of cases, here's the number he went into court, here's the number he won, here's what Ms. Haney has done, and I'll bring that back to you at some future date.
okay, all right. Please include all the pro bono work that Ms. Haney does, and when you bring that information back.
And for what reason?
Well, that would be a part of her. I'm saying those will be part of her statistics and what
her pro bono work. All right.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. So next we have health insurance options. I understand Mr. Rolls has prepared some material for us this evening.
It might actually, let me go ahead and go to the agenda. Next slide, please. So here's what we got. We're going to have some introductory remarks just to set the stage, and I want to talk about the objectives because healthcare is a big topic. We could go all over the place, and I want to keep this pretty focused and get to the point in a reasonable amount of time tonight. Talk about some of the economics of healthcare because I think that's a really important part of it. And there will be a quiz, just a heads up on that part of it. Then compare some insurance providers. I say quote unquote insurance providers because either the one that we use right now or that I'm suggesting we consider are really true insurance. They're more government consortium, so it's a little different. But then talk about the timeline because there's some time pressure with respect to this, so I want to be aware of that. Then I have some proposed committee guidelines for looking into healthcare, and then finish with the recommendation. Next. And so this, it may sound weird, but I'm actually been very excited to have this discussion. And why would I be excited to talk about healthcare? Well, it's for the same reason. I was really pleased when Mr. Jackson, when you brought up the idea, the problem with the lines with the sandwiches at for lunch. And then I knew the very next day, Dr. Boyd was talking to Mrs. Strauss about getting students to make an ordering system to deal with that bottleneck, and also talking to the shop teacher to make a sneeze guard, just sort of second line for sandwiches. So I mean, it's just great when we take our skills and knowledge and apply those to real world problems. So, so that education isn't just head knowledge, it's something that we use to solve problems. And so that's I think what it's all about. And I think we have an opportunity here to do that with healthcare, except it wouldn't be the students, it's the staff getting together, applying some ideas here that can make things a lot better for everybody. And I know that healthcare is really important. So, and this kind of came up when we discussed this last March, and I've been thinking about it kind of since, that it's important so we can get people a little bit concerned thinking about healthcare, because they want that mess with. And I do understand that so far people have been pretty happy with the care we've had, so why mess with it? I think my next couple times here, there might be a few people who may even feel this way about the whole healthcare mention. And I don't want anybody to get alarmed. We're not here to mess anything up. It's to make it better. So I want to reassure everyone by the end that we're trying to offer a better way. And just looking at the budget, we are spending about $3.5 million on healthcare right now. So it's a good opportunity to look for inefficiencies, or waste that we can return back to employees so they get more out of that benefit. We also need to realize the reality. I think right now it's a tough economy with high inflation, so it's going to be tough on the board of supervisors when it comes to budget season, which we're about to get into, as far as the reality that if we want to increase our budget at all, it's going to mean tax increases, and that's not going to be a popular thing right now. So the more we can do to make the most of what we already have, the better. And then also, I think, help our case when if we need to argue for an increased budget, if we can point to specific things we're doing to show that we are being good stewards of what we already have, that's going to only help our argument. Next. So yeah, really just two objectives I want to lay out here from the beginning, just up front. So first thing I want by the end, I would like for us to agree to ask Dr. Boyd to form an ad hoc committee to consider healthcare insurance options, and as well to write a charter for that committee, and that it would be presented at the first regular meeting in January for our approval. And secondly, I'd like us to agree to invite Jefferson Health Plans to present at the first regular board meeting in January. And the rest of the presentation will be talking about those things. But in passing, Jefferson Health Plans, I'm not suggesting that we invite a whole bunch of insurance companies to talk to us, because they're not actually an insurance company per se. It's a different kind of approach that I just want to be aware of, you all to be aware of. And so really it'd be the committee who be talking to them in depth, but I think we still at least need a high level understanding of it. Next slide. So as I said, I think it's really understanding some economic principles is really important to approaching this well and making the most of it. So I don't know about you all, but you probably all had some economics at some point. And I know my first exposure was AP Econ in high school, and it was incredible. It's really just stretched my brains in ways I didn't expect at all. Made my brain hurt, in a good way. And there were a lot of just good principles there that I think are useful for all students. And I was a little disappointed to find out that we don't have AP Econ currently at King George High School. That's a topic for another time. But I mean, there's great principles like the idea of no such thing as a free lunch, opportunity costs, sunk costs, and the law of diminishing returns. There's lots of things that could go on and on, but just two of them I want to talk about tonight that apply directly to healthcare are these. So the first one is marginal benefits versus marginal costs when choosing between options. So quite simply, you're comparing one option to another. You look, okay, what's this second option? How much more does that cost? And how much more benefit am I going to get? And clearly, if the marginal benefit of the other option is greater than the marginal cost, then you should do it. So we'll come back to that in a minute. And secondly, is the whole idea, which you're not necessarily going to get in microeconomics, but you'll hear economists talk about this, just the different dynamic in people's behavior on whether they feel like they're spending their own money versus spending other people's money. And that's a very important point. So I'm just going to tell a quick story to illustrate that. So I have a friend who's taken his family to Disney World multiple times, and went first time or two, and their experience was the kids were constantly nagging, hey, I want to buy an ice cream cone, I want that souvenir, I want that teddy bear. And it was just, it's a drag for mom and dad when you have to answer that constantly. So he had a thought, I'm gonna do this differently the next time. So he said, all right, each kid, what you're gonna get, I'm gonna give you so much money. I don't know, so call it $100. That's what you get. It's your money. You can use it to buy snacks, treats, souvenirs, whatever you want. And it's your money. So even if you decide not to spend it all, that's fine. You can save it and take it home, spend however you want. And the change was incredible. Then, he could even have some fun with it. He's like, hey, little Johnny, you want to buy an ice cream cone? And Johnny's like, no, that ice cream cone is $10. You kidding me? I'm not gonna spend my money on that. As opposed to the constant nagging. And it just makes sense. Logically, it's your money versus other people's money. When it's mom and dad's money, and either you nag and you get something. If you don't nag, you get nothing. So if you get the ice cream cone and you don't even really want it, you eat half of it, throw the rest away, then at least you got something, right? But when it's your money, it's totally different. So I'm gonna apply those two to healthcare, starting with the next slide. So here's an illustration of how there can be some inefficiency. So we have an employee named Sally, and so this is gonna lay out a scenario that I'll ask you to answer the question at the end. So here's the information. So cost share for the insurance premiums, let's say is 80% for the division and 20% for the employee. And Plan B offers slightly more benefits, and as a result, it costs $100 a month more than Plan A. And now we're going to hold here because the next thing's going to be the answer, and we're not going to reveal that until you've everybody a chance to answer. So Sally compares the plans and determines that she would get $21 per month more value from Plan B than from Plan A. So given that, which plan is she going to choose? And Mr. Jackson, Mr. Archer, feel free to answer as well if you'd like. And to just give you a hint, so again, this is just a marginal benefit versus marginal cost problem. So Sally sees the marginal benefit of Plan B is $21 more per month. So you're gonna have to compare that to the marginal cost of it. And what would that lead her to decide? All right.
Law your mind.
I would say Plan B.
Okay, why?
Well, if she's getting $21 a month more value from Plan B than A, then the cost would outweigh, or the benefit would outweigh the cost, correct?
So what would the cost be?
80% division, 20% employee.
Right, so you're right, it's Plan B. So we'll hit that at the bottom, and the next slide will lay out exactly why. Well done, Mr. Archer. I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson.
Can't think like an attorney.
Okay, next. And next again. Okay, so Sally's cost share was 20% of $100, so that's $20. And next, and we saw that she assessed the value, this additional value of Plan B being $21 per month. So $21 is more than $20. So it's in her interest to go ahead and go for that extra plan, even though it costs $100 more. It only costs her $20 more. The division bore the other $80. So next. So the division spends essentially, it's an important point, that they spent an extra $80 to give Sally only an extra $1 of additional value. Next bullet. So what happened to the other $79? Well, Sally logically isn't really too concerned about that because it was other people's money. She got another dollar's worth of value for nothing as far as she was concerned. And one more. So yeah, that means you see there's waste there. The division spent $80 to give Sally only one more dollar. That's not the way we want to spend our money, I don't think. And so there's potentially a better way. So in this scenario, what if the division simply offered Sally the $80 towards insurance, regardless of which plan she chose? Then it'd just be her money, right? And so she assessed the marginal benefit of Plan B at $21 per month. And let's see how this plays out now. So now she gets that $80 no matter what. So she looks at marginal benefit versus marginal cost and sees that marginal benefit of Plan B would be $21, but it would cost her another $100 to get it. So she says, so what does she say? She says, no way, I'll stick with Plan A and I'll put the $80 in my pocket. Next. And so she gets the full benefit of that division's $80. So the division spent $80 to give Sally $80 worth of value, much better than spending $80 to give her $1. So theoretically, Sally would choose Plan A for any amount of money the division gives her, even for $1. However, for purpose of the discussion today, any changes that I think we'd want to make to healthcare, I'd recommend giving Sally as much as we can while staying budget neutral. The whole idea here is that we keep spending our $3.5 million on healthcare while giving more value to the employees for our $3.5 million. Any questions so far? I don't want to just go forever. All right. Okay, so next slide. So that's just an example of how applying economic thinking to healthcare can save money. And that's not the only way. There's other things like wellness. Obviously people want to be healthy, so that's enough reason in and of itself you'd hope just to be healthy. But then there's also financial costs to making choices where you're not eating as well or exercising as well. But then those costs get distributed to everyone. And there's an opportunity to pay people, give a wellness incentive for being healthy. And when you have insurance, if we as a division are really healthy and we pay our premiums and we have very few claims, then the insurance company just does well, right? That money goes in their pocket. Whereas there's other opportunities where if we're doing things ourselves, we can put that money in our pocket. So, but let's just compare what we got now to what we potentially could have. Right now we have Local Choice, which is our current provider. We've had them since 2016. It's a government consortium created by the General Assembly in '89, and it uses Anthem as the insurance, which, like I said, I think everyone's been very pleased with. And as much as healthcare has gone up over the years, I was surprised to see that the premium increases have admittedly been very small in the time that we've had it, though I have heard from at least one source that there was a time of rapid premium increases in the past that we fortunately missed. But and again, anecdotally, employees are quite happy with the insurance we have. But it also has a limited number of plans that they offer. And so, in effect, we only offer one plan to employees currently. I mean, there's like a very slight difference between a comprehensive or just preventative dental, but it's pretty insignificant. So we don't offer much in terms of choice there. Whereas the Jefferson Health Plans that I learned of at the VSBA conference, they use Cigna by comparison, also a huge network of providers through them. It's also not traditional insurance. It's a government nonprofit created by the Ohio Assembly back in '85, but it was just expanded into Virginia. The General Assembly of Virginia agreed to allow them to come to Virginia, which in terms of economic principles, competition is good. That helps to drive up service and drive down costs. And we wouldn't be the first ones doing this. There's 7 divisions in Virginia that have already adopted it. And they offer numerous ways to adopt a my money orientation where it incentivizes making good choices, such as they'll let you fully customize your plans. There's almost limitless number of plans as opposed to just limited ones for Local Choice. And so you can get innovative and arrange things however you need to really optimize how we spend the money. And then another thing is we would have our own money reserve. So let's say we have a good year where everyone's eating well, exercising, doing different kinds of things that will help lower health costs. That money doesn't just go to the insurance company and stay in their pocket. It would go into our reserve and build up over time. And eventually, once that gets big enough to where we have it to cover whatever claims we think we might have, we can be all right, that's enough. Now, from now on, we have extra money every December. For instance, maybe we just waive everybody's premium, or we say, hey, everybody, here's a December bonus. Thanks for being a King George employee. Things like that. And that's just a few. Again, I'm not trying to sell you on JHP right now. I'm just trying to sell you on the idea it's worth hearing them out. So next slide. And so timeline considerations. I did talk with HR briefly about some of these ideas beforehand, just to make sure we're prepared and there aren't surprises. So Mrs. Yuzerski, I don't know if you want to add more detail. You were mentioned before about there's a law for the RFIs. We've already put that out. You got to give 90 days to hear back, and I guess it's coming due on December 15th.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Rules. We spoke with Megan Pitts today at the procurement office in the county following your email on Friday afternoon, and We have the RFI out right now. That was out at the end of last week. And that will actually expire on December 15th. Shortly after that, we can push out an RFP. RFP actually can be much shorter than 90 days. 30 days was what she suggested, 30 days, 60 days. So we can modify that timeline a little bit. You know, the only other thing I'd say here is, you know, if it's the decision of the board to form a committee, she was very cautious in letting us know not to go into that committee with any preconceived notions on any particular programs or organizations or things of that nature, just so that we make sure that we give the due diligence to the procurement process and follow things in the correct approach moving forward.
Can you say again the person that you're voting there?
Megan Pitts is the procurement officer with the county. Is that her title?
Okay, so but hearing that was a concern since, I guess, talk about timeline. Dr. Boyd, maybe you want to talk about that now.
So that actually gives us a little more time.
Right, but when would you say we need a decision by on insurance if we're going to make a change?
So our renewal typically comes up the end of February. So if we were to go in a different direction besides what we're going with now, our renewal with Anthem comes out at the end of February. So I would say shortly around there, we need to make a decision. Is that correct?
So I'm curious about that. We didn't approve it until March last year. Was last year an exception for some reason?
So it would be 90 days from the beginning of that would be 90 days from July 1st?
So you're just saying we have more time to approve it if we only have the 90-day problem if we're trying to change. We have to tell them that so, I mean, when we approved it in March, essentially we didn't have the ability to not approve it because it would have been pushing the 90 days. Okay, so there's time, you know, we're seeing we need to have a decision around the end of February, so we don't have a whole lot of time to lose here.
I think you're saying 90 days, we need to know 90 days before the date in February. Is that right?
Before.
Notice.
Right.
We are not going with them next year.
And that 90 days would
Prior
be
to.
when?
From the beginning of the next renewal,
Probably
right?
the beginning of the next renewal, which is open enrollments in April. It would go, the renewal is due in March. For our July 1, our new health insurance starts July 1. So we would have to let them know, it's 3 months back, March?
April.
March.
That'd be April, right?
April, right?
Can't count backwards, July.
Yeah. So in March to be April 1st.
April. So yeah,
April
end of March, 1st of April.
But Mr. Rolls, may I ask, so you're talking about forming a committee, which this is the first week of December. You're talking about forming a committee, gathering input from a majority of the staff of 600 people approximately.
650 full-time.
650 full-time
Receive benefits.
employees plus other entities. And then having them in less than 2 months make a decision that impacts every employee. That seems like a not feasible time frame.
Well, I do have more that addresses that in the next couple of slides. If I think the best thing would be just to finish that, and I hear your point, and I do have some words to address that.
I'll go right ahead.
Next slide, please. So timeline expectation. So as you just said, we don't have a lot of time we don't have time for anything other than simple changes. regardless whether we stick with TLC, go with JHP, or go with a traditional insurance company. And so my thoughts for TLC is we only would really have time to, if we need to change there, we could either just stick with what we got, or we could maybe add one more plan. I don't have all the details. Again, it'd be going to the committee to look into all the details, but it does seem like at least one thing they could consider would be adding a high deductible plan, which they could, pair with a health savings account, which would maybe be an attractive option for, younger, healthier folks if they wanted to do that, where they can pay into an HSA to cover their high deductible if they ever have a problem. And then same kind of thing, once that fills up and they don't have any problems, then they can just start taking money out of that and spend on whatever they want. So that could possibly happen in a short timeline, I might think, for the TLC option. But if you went with JHP, and one thing about when I said they have customized plans where you could change everything, of course, that sounds overwhelming. How in the world are we going to do that? Come up with a complex plan and get it approved by everybody in 2 months? And you can't. I agree. But what they could offer is to say, well, they are a competitor for local choice now, a similar type thing. And what they could do, since it is customizable, we could say, hey, well, we're not ready for big change right now, but so what can you do for us? And they say, well, we can come in and just give you a plan that's the exact same thing as what you currently got. So it looks the same as far as what they're getting through local choice, but it's through JHP. And then you could compare apples to apples. Well, so I'm getting this service from TLC for this cost and this network, and look at the same thing for JHP. But then if you want to look at more significant changes with them, redesigning what you're actually getting, they could work on that over the course of the next year for the following year, and take your time to do that. But essentially everyone would have the same coverage still. So it wouldn't necessarily be radical. And again, this is high level, so the committee can look and talk to JHP and see whether they agree with that. That would truly be an insignificant change as far as what people actually see. And if they feel like it's too much, then they can say it's too much. And this is just an opportunity I want to offer to the employees to get some more for their money. And so the next of this is just, but if we do the community, here's some guidelines that I would recommend, and this is totally up for discussion about anything else that anybody else would want to add. So we would want to represent, I think, all the various employees, the different pay scales, the different types of employees we have. But we got to be careful at not having too many members in that committee. Obviously, committees are notorious for not necessarily being super efficient ways to do things. Efficient, for example, if somebody says, hey, that car looks like it was designed by committee, that's not a compliment, is it? So we need to be smart about how we form this, and it's got to be pretty clearly defined, I think, from the start if we're going to be able to decide some things quickly. I think members, we need to have folks who are willing to look over numbers, people who like to look at spreadsheets, and are interested and willing to research innovative ways to maximize healthcare value for employees. I mean, that last part that's more of a thing for if we're looking at the long-term approach over the course of a year. Not so much for just making the quick comparisons apple to apples, like I mentioned, but for 4, consider using a portion of our savings. Well, let me go back to that too. So I have come across a book about healthcare and innovative solutions for it that I haven't, as much as I do like thinking about economics, it hasn't seemed so appealing that I've gotten to it just yet. So I'll look over that maybe over the next month, and it's something that maybe if it looks good, we might want to get for ourselves and the committee as ideas to look through. That would be like I'm saying, the long-term plan type thing too. And want people who are willing to do that. If they're like, that sounds awful, then those are probably not people we don't want on the committee. So, but for 4, I think we would want to consider using a portion of the savings that we would potentially realize from doing this to pay members if they end up working with the long term, because we don't want to have to beg people to be on this committee. We want people who want to be there. And I know there's concern about precedent about paying people to be on committees, because typically we don't do that, but this is kind of a special situation, I think, where it wouldn't be extra money we're spending, but we could pay them out of the savings. And if there aren't savings, then I guess there wouldn't be money to pay. And so just having people compete to be in the committee would be a benefit, where we really have people who are on there ready to work and to improve it. And I'd also want the new structure, whatever they come up with, to not increase the healthcare costs over what we already have, or basically what it would cost to continue with local choice. And one last thing that they could consider is, like, currently there is a pretty big disparity between the maximum benefit we pay some employees and the minimum benefit we pay others. For instance, there's $1,266 per month is the most we would pay as a cost share for healthcare, whereas somebody in the same, pay band could, if they could decline coverage, and they only get $20 a month. That's a huge pay difference per month in total compensation for folks. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't want some pay difference. I mean, some pay difference probably makes sense, but that's something the committee might want to consider. And also considering the fact that if you increase the pay we give people to decline coverage, there might be more people who choose to decline coverage, which would save us money potentially. But it all depends. These are details they look at. And one thing I'm recalling now from a previous slide that I think I glossed over, it was the option of looking at different healthcare insurances. So the fact that we maybe could put out just a 30-day RFP does help. So yeah, maybe we could do that. But I was thinking before, if it was more like 90 days, there'd be so little time, so little chance that we're going to realize any savings with official insurance that it may not be worth asking folks to do that. I mean, I guess that's for discussion too.
What was your last point? What might not be worth? Repeat that.
Well, maybe we just have to, but doing the RFP for traditional insurance, there might not be a whole lot of cost savings to be reaped there. Because I know we did switch to local choice because we were on a traditional insurance plan before, and the premiums were shooting up, and so we switched to local choice to save. But I guess it doesn't hurt to ask. Any thoughts? That's my final slide, I think, right? There's another one? Well, the only one is just to go back to the original objectives, to say the recommendation is let's vote to form a committee, and let's also invite JHP to come talk to us the first regular meeting in January. And then later, if we were doing the more long-term approach, I think we'd want to do extensive surveys to get employee feedback and any kind of recommendations we get from the committee. And there are some, there's other details we don't need to go to right now. But
yeah, I have a couple of questions. Second one's for you, Mr. Rolls. The first one, though, for Dr. Boyd and staff. When we got the current insurance that we have now, how many years ago did you say that we started with our current company? Okay, and before we went with them, did we do a survey? Did we have a committee? What was the process we used? Okay, I'm sorry. That's you're not ready for that, I'm sure.
We went with them in 2016. We were with Anthem at the time.
Oh, okay.
And we were going to realize for the 16-17 school year an 18.5% increase in our health insurance,
Okay.
which we could not, that was just not affordable or just wasn't
Okay.
a go with that. So Anthem actually came to us and said, perhaps you want to go with this program Anthem offers, which is the local choice, which I dug through my notes this afternoon. I still had my presentation they gave to us back in 2016. And according to my notes, Mr. Rolls, it was established by the Virginia legislature in 1990 for specifically counties, schools, municipalities, and political subdivisions. And I think it's also important to note that in our Region 3, there are 17 school divisions. 12 of the 17 school divisions utilize the local choice. Their annual renewal, the increase is equal to or less than 5% every year. And they gave us the historical data to back that. So
This is Anthem we're talking about.
this is the local choice.
The local choice, sorry, okay.
The local choice.
The local choice, I understand.
Which, and again, that's the average renewal.
Right.
Lindsay, I think we sent Dr. Boyd our average increase. Do you have that sheet? I'm sorry, I should have, that one you made today? Yes. I'm glad to give this one to you. Between 16, 17, oh, I can't read this without glasses. And 17, 18, we had a negative 2.01. It dropped to 2%. The next year, there was a slight decrease. Then the next year it went down 2.51. The next year, again, this is 2021, in the height of COVID, it went up 0.1. And then 21, 22, it was 3.76. Last year, it actually dropped a little bit to 3.61, which are, in the insurance world, that's fairly insignificant. I would caution you, after talking with Megan today, if we put out an RFP, which is fine, we can do that. I have no problem with that. But we can't talk to any company. And honestly, it makes me nervous to discuss this JHP, because we can't give anyone, we have to follow the county's procurement process. And we have to go through that. So we can't show favoritism to a single or any of the companies that would provide this. So we wanted to do the 30-day RFP, and I'm glad we can do the 30-day RFP. We could do that. It would be, I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here, but I'd say do the RFP for 30 days, then form your committee to go over what we receive from the RFP, then let the committee look at what is there and then make the recommendation to the board as to what to do with health insurance. JHP has every right to say they want to be in that process.
All right, so thank you, Mrs. Yudichky. Makes me realize I glossed over an important point from a previous slide, and that is that.
Have to do with the procurement process? Is that what you're going to say? Neither does the local choice, because it is a government.
Right.
So they don't have to do it, but it's one we could consider. But I think you need to go out at least and do the RFP.
We could do one, but so it's not illegal for us to talk to them and just to have them tell us about it, because we don't have to do the RFP to talk to them.
I'd be cautious about
I would
inviting
be
anyone.
very
to a board
hesitant
meeting.
about that, because this is a purview of the county process, and we are part of the county process. We are entering budget season, and I'll be honest, I want the Board of Supervisors and the county employees to be supportive of us and not to feel like we're undermining their process.
The county, the local county also uses, the county side, they also use the local, they participate in this. And
Yeah. So, Mr. Rolls, I think you've done a lot of really good homework, and I'm certainly, I think there is likely an avenue here to explore to see what options are, but the timeline, and I know you addressed the timeline, but considering some of this, I mean, even just the recommendation to form an ad hoc committee today to present something to the school board at the first meeting in January, I mean, there are 9 days left. By the end of we're asking for like heroic measures here to make a really rapid decision that has very long-term impacts should a change be made. So while I don't think this is at all a bad conversation, I think this would be a more wisely executed over a longer time frame with a recommendation to consider, say, the following budget season if a change was going to be made. My 2 cents.
And one more question. You had said that if we did an ad hoc committee, you would like to see the RFP done first, then form the committee. Give me your reasons for that again?
we can form the committee.
No, I know, but you obviously lean the other way, so why?
Well, the committee, the committee would need the
Information
information.
that the
before they
RFP would
can-
provide.
Right, and we have to put a scope of work in the RFP.
Right.
I don't believe we want anything less than what is in this.
Right.
And there are some other options. The local choice does have that, and I think you mentioned that in your presentation. They do have the high deductible plan.
Right.
We can go back and do that. I think we did offer that maybe the first year we went with the local choice, but we didn't have many employees take advantage of that.
How much work is it to do an RFP?
That's honestly, that's the county's job. They have to,
That's right. So we would, before we even would entertain that, we'd have to talk to the county.
we have to give them, what do we want in the plan?
Right, I understand. Okay.
And pretty much it would be
Right.
And you have to be able to compare apples to apples, what we want in this plan. It's pretty much, I mean, we had to give her that to do the RFI that went out.
Mr. Rolls, I'm thinking kind of along the same line. It just seems like, first of all, I think it'd be almost impossible to do it by January. But I do think your idea, because I mentioned this also, that I want us to look into the different health plans and make some comparisons. I said that several months ago. I wasn't sure what I was asking, except that let's always look at a comparison. I'm now got a fuller picture, and thank you very much for all your research and then also all the things that you've done. I'm just thinking, I think this is really valuable, but I'm wondering if we should look at this for next year rather than for this year. In other words, still do everything you talked about, do the RFP, have an ad hoc committee, but let's not push something this year, but let's definitely look at it for next year.
Of course, we don't require them to change anything. They could form or look at it and say, yeah, it's too much. I mean, that's fine. I don't see.
My concern, I apologize. My concern, board members and Ms. Yuzerski and any staff people who are listening tonight, is that we have 9 days left in this school year, in this month. There is a very significant holiday season after that. We're coming back, getting ready for at several levels of education. We're getting ready for exams. We're getting ready for end of semester. There's a lot that happens in January and February and March. And we are tonight going to be processing more employee information, and I hope it doesn't include any more resignations or concerns, but my fear is that it does. We are in dire straits trying to recruit, and this may be a very positive recruiting effort, but I don't know that. And at this point, am I willing to ask our teachers, our educators, our bus drivers to give their time and effort to this committee right now? I don't know how we do that except a long-term request to say to teachers, and staff, can you actually put your time and effort into this? Because it is going to take time and effort. It's going to take a commitment to do this. And that worries me.
I think especially important with all this is that we might do some sort of survey, which actually could be helpful, but that would obviously take time, which we couldn't get it done this year. I mean, I'm in total favor of what you presented. I'm just the timeline I'm worried about, like the others. But I also think that if we do this, we need to get some input from the staff and do some sort of survey, which would take probably a couple months alone. You're smiling.
I brought my big guns with me.
All right. I mean, do you agree, I guess, is to get the input? Okay, some sort of survey. And
Just another tidbit that Megan shared with us today on the call was that this time of year, if you go with a 30-day RFP, there's the possibility, because of the time of year, we're not going to get as many as we normally would, just because a lot of the people who would answer these or submit these are not working. They're off. So I'm not sure the quality of the information we would receive with a 30-day RFP would be what we would want.
could we do I'm sorry, I'm talking too much.
Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
Could we do an RFP? I mean, is there some sort of time of the year when we shouldn't do one or should do one? I mean, I hear you hinting at that sort of thing.
I just took from the conversation today, this is not necessarily a good time.
I understand that.
I would think anytime. She didn't really.
Well, I'm thinking
longer.
Pardon?
Or we just extend it.
You extend it.
The time.
The time of the RFP. We could do it right now, but just make it maybe a 45-day RFP.
What about 90?
90, yeah.
That's honestly, that's what I thought RFPs were. Maybe that's mostly for construction bids.
Right.
She said it really depends on the scope of the work. Depending on what is being bid out.
I'd see an advantage of doing something like this before the end of the school year. So that way teachers can get an idea and we might even be able to communicate with them, which might actually help with recruiting and several other things if we indeed have a savings for them. Probably wouldn't necessarily help with our budget, but it might really help with recruit. I mean, we don't know. There's too many variables. I guess I'm thinking in my mind, Mr. Rolls, is that what a wonderful opportunity there might be to have something like this done before the end of the year. And then look at making some decisions as we start the new year. It's just my opinion.
Have what done by the end of the year? Can you repeat what you just said?
He asked to have what done by the end of the year?
To have an RFP done and then be able to have an ad hoc committee we choose right after we do the RFP, possibly begin the RFP and after we get back from the holiday February and see if we can do 90 days or whatever, or not 90, maybe 45, and then choose an ad hoc committee. So they'd be meeting starting in maybe March, and then they would be able to give us some kind of report by May.
Can Dr. Boyd and Michelle, when she said today though, didn't she say that most RFPs, the quotes were good for 90 days?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Good.
So when you think about that, if a quote is only good for 90 days, if you did something in May, it's probably too soon for the next budget year. Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe next.
September, August.
So it sounds to me like if there's I think a survey for staff rate is good too. It seems like perhaps that's information that would stay good and accurate, right? So maybe a first step would be a survey to find out if there was a preference or a desire for looking at options, followed by maybe a committee to evaluate the survey responses, and then potentially an RFP after that.
What would be the purpose of a survey before you even have options?
I was just going to say.
Find out, well, you could gauge satisfaction with health insurance options as it stands today.
You also would encourage discussion about the issue and give people time enough to look at their own situation, their own plans, and decide whether they want to participate in the committee.
Yep.
I mean, we're asking people to give their time, their very valuable time. I keep going back to this. An educator's time is their treasure. And that's what we're moving into. So, and if we're looking at all the staff levels, all the salary scale levels, we're going to be pulling people from custodial levels, from a variety of roles in the system. So I think getting a group together is going to be a genuine effort. And I think that survey might start conversations about this.
So Dr. Boyd, can we ask your opinion on the matter here?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts as far as timeline and what recommendation would be for executing this if we so choose?
Well, Gail's point about the time it's going to take teachers is most certainly an important one. I would also make sure that we fully consider what this means to the benefits package we're also offering our employees, and what anticipation or anxiousness it may cause. So I think we need to pay specific attention to that. I do know, didn't we say that we had to give local choice 90 days for the renewal? So that's part of the parameter as well, right?
And we have, you as a board, tell me if I'm wrong, Lindsay, we have to approve our insurance rates for the next year with the local choice in March.
Right. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
So they send me this packet in January, which has all of our projected rate increases. and then we budget that, and then we present that to the board for approval. You approve it depending on if there's a rate increase, if the board's gonna cover that increase, or if the employee covers that increase. And then I have to submit that data renewal by March. So it's really backing up to January
Right,
for that,
right.
for the start of this process.
So I'm thinking the window, the most appropriate window is between January and wasn't it April? Well, Lindsay said March. Wasn't it April 1st that would be the 90 days prior to the renewal date of July 1st?
We have to know those rates in March.
But didn't we mention that there's 90 days that we would that we have to give local choice
I think
if we're
that-
not going to renew with them?
Right, I think that probably coincides with about the time that they give us
You're
this.
talking about-
We tell them,
No.
sorry, we're not going with you this year.
Mhm.
You know,
So really, the window of time to do this is like January to March. As far as pulling the RFP, all of the information, survey information.
just remember, according to Megan, an RFP, a quote is only good for 90 days.
It would,
Right.
yeah. So while maybe that may be true, the January to March timeframe, maybe that's January to March 2024, not 2023, right? And then you can do your homework for a year and be educated, and then, yes.
Because really, we can have the RFP out well before that so that we can view it within that January, March timeframe and also have the survey data going into that January to March timeframe. Does that sound right?
So we start the RFP in the end of this year? Is that what we're saying? Ideally?
This school year?
45 days, if that's the window of time we would want to go with.
I would believe so, but I'd like to check with Megan on that just to make sure. Megan in the
Right, I
procurement
understand, I
office.
understand. So, all right. So I'm thinking December or whatever, 45 days, and then you have the committee, we could start meeting in January. And then we'd be able to have the decision by March.
This year?
No.
Next year.
Next year.
But I'm saying,
Well-
you're speaking for next year.
Yes, not today.
But yeah, so what are we gonna do this whole next year to
Well,
do stuff
I
like
think
this
your
time next
idea,
year?
I think your idea is fantastic. We always need to be looking at better options for, and again, there's always this balance of, obviously we have budget concerns for the school division as a whole. And then also we have the recruiting issue. So we want to do the best we can for the teachers and how can we save them the most money? There's always this balancing going on. And I think, I heard what you said, Ms. Hawk, but in my experience of now mostly in private, but of surveying teachers for things like this is they really like that. It's kind of giving them, oh, you're asking my opinion rather than just making a decision and saying, here are your two options. But we wouldn't want to have them a pressure as we need this right away. I agree with that part. So I guess I'd like to see us possibly then, yes, for next year, beginning the RFP possibly in December, choosing the ad hoc committee the end of January, and then having something ready. And then we would tell them by March that, hey, we're not going with you, or we are, or we got another company or whatever.
So may I suggest at this point, given the information we've discussed tonight and after another conversation with Megan Pitts, maybe coming back to you guys with a proposed timeline?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That works.
All right, with you, Mr. Rolls?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so I still have questions about what a survey purpose it would serve in this next year. So, but maybe something that could inform that is to invite JHP to come out and present. And I know you have legal concerns, Ms. Hawk, but that's a state law and they're quite confident. The representative from Virginia, he's a former Virginia superintendent, so he's very familiar with the law. So it doesn't apply to the consortium. And we could always ask legal too, but I think hearing from them would help to write a better survey.
So I think that information could still be gathered in an RFP. I think to fraternize with them ahead of time is,
I think Mr. Rolls referring to what we put in the survey. It might be helpful. Isn't that what you were saying?
Say that again.
I think the reason why you want it, I'm a little leery of it too, and I want to get some legal opinions, but I think what you're saying is what would we put in the survey? And if we heard from GH, what's the name of that? JHC or whatever, if we heard from them a little bit, we might be able to put some more information in the surveys. Is that what you were saying?
Right.
I just, like others are concerned, I would just be concerned about the legal ramifications and make sure that we're not doing something. I appreciate you said a superintendent said it'd be fine, but I think we'd still want to get some legal opinion about it before we did it.
All right, well, can we ask that question then? If we need to ask legal? And I think it's a state law, and so perhaps we could ask the Commonwealth Attorney to just do that for us for free. And I'm not sure what all they would, when they weigh in.
I would, so I would, Dr. Boyd, could you come back to us at our next meeting with a recommendation on,
Timeline.
yeah, on the timeliness and the appropriate legal counsel to seek?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Good. All right. Okay, we content with that?
That sounds fine.
All right, okay. So next, we have our addition to our discussion item here. So, oh, we have two, yeah, the policy too. Okay, so first was the visitation policies that Mr. Bush, you wanted to
Yeah, this is, I'm primarily wanted to talk about this because there's parents that are listening tonight, probably more than anything else, is we had, and I don't want to get into too much detail because I think it'd be inappropriate, but we had a visitation from an organization at one of our schools. The parents were not necessarily notified and the organization wasn't vetted at the level that it should have been necessarily. And so there was a lot of parents that wanted to opt out of not having their child listen or be part of this presentation that this organization had given. And so when I looked at the different policies, I just think it's very important. And I've already spoken with Dr. Boyd about this, and he's already met with the administrators. And in the future, you know, assuring that that will be done is that those organizations, whether they're going to be visiting a classroom or whether they're going to visit the whole school, they will be properly vetted. And that even in pretty much any organization that visits, I don't care who they are, okay? And I'm not talking about anything related to my agenda or anybody's agenda, but any organization that comes to a classroom or a school that's not part of our division should be vetted. And then no matter who they are, the parents should be notified to allow them the opportunity to opt out for their children. And I just wanted to say that publicly, Madam Chair. And also it does relate to these various policies that I mentioned, because policy KF talks about that any material that any organization might present has to be I'm using the word vetted, has to be looked at by the administration and the principal and the superintendent's office. Same with any gifts that they're going to give, whether it's plants or whatever it might be, that must be vetted through the administration, the superintendent. What I'm saying is this is the same kind of thing. That's why just simply they reference those policies, because this is similar to make sure that any organization that visits any school in the classroom or the school as a whole is vetted, and then the parents are notified ahead of time what this organization is, what they're going to do to allow them to say, I don't want my children to be part of that.
Can I ask for clarification? So you said something about gifts. You wanted that vetted as to what kind of gift an organization might.
Well, it's actually, now
If
that's in
okay.
policy
So
KH.
you said, okay, you mentioned plants. So if someone sends home
Or whether it's
let's say-
plants or whether it's
Okay.
Flowers or whether it's decorations or it
So
doesn't
you're-
matter what the gift is.
Okay, meaning that if
Any gift.
someone wants to send home a sprouted pumpkin seed, that there needs to be an opt
If there's an
out?
entity, according to the policy, and we can read it if we want to, but as I understand it, if there's any gift that an entity is giving the school, that gift needs to be vetted, I guess, for lack of a better word, by the local administration to be sure that the gift is appropriate and how it's going to be used and so on. And those are my words. But the policy talks about that the gifts must go through policy KH. There it is.
Yes.
Real or personal property is given to and accepted by the board? Is that what?
Yeah, thank you for putting that up. The school board acts on the offers of gifts to schools or to the school division. The school board may impose reasonable conditions on donations. When any real or personal property is given and accepted by the board, it vests in the board unless inconsistent with the terms of the gift. Okay, this is talking about the board, but I would also, when it talks about given to the schools or the school division, I just think that any gift that's given should be vetted. because, there could be some gifts that might be inappropriate. And also the parents might not appreciate necessarily some gifts coming home. A lot of gifts they would appreciate and some they may not. To give you an example, if somebody was to give the obvious one would be that a group wants to give a t-shirt. Let's say the t-shirt is, let's say it's some political entity, okay? Obviously, the administration say, no, we don't do that. You can't give that t-shirt here. That's just an example. I think that's an obvious one we'd all agree with. No, you cannot. I appreciate that you want to do that, give everybody free t-shirts, but you can't do that because of what it says on the t-shirt. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That needs to be vetted. So that's an obvious one. But then
Okay.
also the organization themselves, parents need to be able, just like everything else that we're talking about with the action item this today that we put on for discussion, the same kind of thing is allowing parents to be able to opt out of any organization that might visit the classroom or the school.
So is there a definition on organization? I mean, if we have say a county organization, say an emergency responder is going to come to a field day at an elementary school, we need to have that, we need opt out for, the fire department to come.
It's a good point. And I would say that the parents should be aware they're coming. They may even want to join them. But my point is that parents need to be able to have input as to what they're going to allow their children to be part of. That's it.
Okay. I worry about the additional burden that is placed on our administrators to make sure that every item has an opt out, but that's
Well,
fine.
Speaking on behalf as administrator for a whole lot of years, there's not that many organizations. I'm not talking about school organizations, okay? I'm not talking about DECA or anything like that, all right? I'm talking about outside organizations that want to come to the school and make some sort of presentation or some sort of assembly or whatever, that we need to vet them. That's it. Yes, I did that every single time. So I think Dr. Boyd, most of the time you would vet those kinds of things. We would be irresponsible not to vet those things. Dr. Boyd, do you have any comments with that?
No, I'm fine with that. I totally understand where you're coming from. It's certainly a process that we have had in place now. We've spoken with administration. I have no issues with parents wanting to, this isn't something where, there's a couple different ways we've looked at this. This is not a process where we're trying to limit people from coming into the school buildings. It's not a process where we're trying to remove instructional material, but it is a process where a parent and a family has an opportunity to make a decision based on whatever that presentation is.
Exactly.
So I understand that.
That's correct.
But isn't that the process we already have in place?
We have a very similar process, yes.
And
And actually, part of this explicit material, we're getting ready to talk about that in pretty great detail with this policy that we're going to approve tonight, that we can talk about in great detail.
So I was more, because I know there's a lot of parents that I've spoken with in the last week or two that are listening tonight. And I did want to make sure that we're all clear on that. Dr. Boyd made that clear. And I have made it clear when I responded to some of the parents also.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is we are going to revisit policy manual update IIA instructional materials. Mr. Rolls, you had something you wanted to distribute?
Yes, I'll distribute that. My computer has gone to sleep and won't wake up, so I think I'm gonna have to restart. That might delay things, but let me pass this out in the meanwhile. That should be enough. I think this is actually page 3 of the policy. Am I one short? I didn't bring enough for the students. Sorry about that, but.
please do.
All right, so quite simply, the policy is about sexually explicit material and notifying parents beforehand. And similarly, for some actually recent incidents we've had, where I thinking drawing the line at we need to notify for sexually explicit content. I think there's quite a bit more that we should notify parents about before it's necessarily sexually explicit. I mean, that seems like a pretty high threshold to meet before we're telling parents about what's going on. There's certainly be things that they have concerns about that aren't necessarily sexually explicit. And if I could pull this back up, I'd like to even read the definition of sexually explicit to make my point. My apologies, I had to restart. Or if anybody else has it, would you, from the last page of the policy, it has the definition of sexually explicit. Would you mind reading that? Right there. Let's back up. Back up a little bit, John. Right there. Right up there at the bottom. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'll read that. So we're saying sexually explicit content is when we have to notify parents of that. And the definition of that means any description or of B, any picture, photograph, drawing, motion picture film, digital image, or similar visual representation depicting sexual bestiality, a lewd exhibition of nudity as defined in this policy, sexual excitement, sexual conduct, or sadomasochistic abuse as defined in this policy, coprophilia, had to look that up, use safe search for sure if you do that, urophilia, or fetishism. Instructional material should not be designated as sexually explicit based solely on sexual orientation of the characters therein. But so a lot of that doesn't read so much to me like, okay, this is when we need to notify parents. A lot of that can almost be a definition of what there's really no need to teach that in school at all. And I don't need to go that far for this particular policy, just to make the point that I don't think that's a good enough definition of where we're going to draw the line, where we're going to notify parents. I think they deserve to know about much less than that. And so that's what's reflected in my edits here. So currently, if you look on the page I handed out, which is page 3 of that policy, the 4th paragraph reads, King George County School Board ensures parental notification of any instructional material that includes sexually explicit content. And I'm proposing that we append to the end of that, or any contact that it can reasonably be expected that some parents would object to or find age inappropriate. That's the first one. Do we want to discuss these one by one, or do you want me to just list them all first?
You have what? You have 2
Well, 3 really. So
3.
the
Okay.
next paragraph currently reads, King George County School Board provides non-explicit instructional material and related academic activities to any student whose parents request that the student be provided with such instructional material and or activities. And I'm suggesting that we insert after non-explicit or alternative instructional material. Meaning that the instructional material doesn't simply need to be non-explicit. There could be other objections besides it being explicit. And the final thing is there's multiple instances in those final paragraphs to sexually explicit content. And I would suggest that we expand that, each instance of that, to read instead sexually explicit or otherwise potentially objectionable content. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rolls. So do any of my colleagues have feedback at the moment? My initial concern with the language that you added, Ms. Rolls, is that or any content that it can reasonably expected that some parents would object to, or changing the definition of sexually explicit or otherwise potentially objectionable content, I think is too ambiguous. While I agree with your notion about the definition of sexually explicit content being things that don't need to be taught in school, I agree with you on that. But the benefit of having it spelled out in a discrete fashion is such that it's clear as to what is not what meets the intent. And so something that can be reasonably expected to is way too broad of terminology to be able to be enforceable, in my opinion. So I'm not in favor of these changes for that reason.
Well, I think the important point to get across, obviously it's policy level, so we don't get super specific. Most policies, we leave it to the superintendent to write either processes or regulations to carry it out. And so I think the important, I hear what you're saying, and certainly this can't stand alone, but I think the important point that it makes that, hey, we're not drawing the line at sexually explicit. There are things short of sexually explicit that we're not okay with not telling parents about before we teach them. And this policy already requires that the superintendent go through and make very clear procedure for identifying these kinds of materials. So he's doing that already. And so that's where the extra detail would be. And I'm sure we certainly could request to see that if we wanted to get to that level of detail. Not that we would necessarily approve it as a board. We just probably, the assumption would be that it's valid unless we saw a concern that we wanted to bring it up. Are my thoughts.
Any other discussion? Dr. Boyd, do you have an opinion?
Yeah. So without revising this policy, just to talk a little bit from a practical nature as to what this means. We've talked about this policy and really kind of vetted it for months. If you've watched the local news, every school division in the Commonwealth right now is vetting and discussing this policy. From a practical nature, what it means is the teacher, as the course begins, will issue a syllabus to students and also parents. And in that syllabi, you'll have a list of the instructional material. If there is anything by chance, and of course we don't want to teach some of those things in school, I agree with you guys, something that would be considered by definition sexually explicit, it has to be identified in the syllabus with the caveat below that says that if you choose as a parent not to have your child participate in this content, then there is an alternative activity that you could choose otherwise that would be not be punitive in nature. And then it also talks in greater detail about changing that decision and all of that moving forward. In fact, we'll be meeting with administrators again tomorrow. We're going to talk about in a very critical and practical nature as to what needs to be included in the syllabi for all teachers moving forward. So, I understand where you're coming from. A lot of the trepidation that we've had and the conversations we've had, even when it came to the policy itself, was how do you define certain things and where we draw the lines? Because I can tell you, in many conversations with employees, teachers, community members, I can tell you that reasonable is drawn in a different place 1,000 different times. So that's a very challenging thing to establish. I think that's why this policy went into such great detail on providing definitions, some of which, like you said, have safe search on if you're looking them up. So I think the intent of what you would like to have will be met if we follow the practice that this policy is going to push forward by issuing a syllabus to students and parents with the instructional materials that will be covered during that period, with the caveat that parents will have preview of that and the opportunity to request an alternative assignment if they'd like.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Go ahead, Ms. Hawk.
What you're talking about are other than the sexually explicit issues, and I certainly, having been a family life educator and a variety of roles in my experience, we certainly recognize that there are levels of material that are truly age inappropriate, and that's a good term. And we over the years, the Department of Education, through many functions, have arrived at these definitions. And I just saw these have been updated fairly regularly. But I want to call your attention to policy INB, which is clarifying teaching about controversial issues. The King George County School Board recognizes that preparation for effective citizenship is one of the major purposes of education. The preparation for effective citizenship includes the study of issues that are controversial. Such study is carried out in an atmosphere free from bias, prejudice, or coercion. In teaching about controversial issues, teachers are expected to establish a learning environment where each student can study the issues within a curriculum that is appropriate to the student's knowledge and maturity, and provide instruction in an atmosphere that is free from bias, prejudice, or coercion. It goes on to say, although the instructional program does include study of the political party system in the United States, the school board does not endorse any political party or candidate. And this particular policy was updated as recently as August of 2021. I don't know what other specific types of issues you have concerns about, whether they're science or mathematics or astronomy, et cetera. Our teachers cover a vast variety of topics. And I think using this policy, we already discuss how we manage controversial issues. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion?
Well, it would be good to look at that INB. I don't know if it necessarily covers what I'm concerned about here. So I'm going to just follow up with Dr. Boyd. And it sounds like you're saying that just with your process that you would tend to be sensitive to what the community, what they expect, you know, beyond just the line here for sexually explicit. But I mean, if that's the case, why wouldn't we just, is there any harm in putting that in the policy? We're doing it anyways.
I think the harm is going to be maybe to the educators concerned about what they can and cannot teach. That would be my only concern. I think what is clearly defined in this policy, again, things that we don't want to go, you know, things that we don't want to teach are things that we can clearly let our educators know, you know, this is sexually explicit and this is the policy for that. I think the practice and procedure that we're going to follow is going to address an avenue for any parent who draws exception to any content. And of course, I mean, you know, it's a partnership between us and parents, and we're going to work with them if they've got any level of concern with any content. We're always going to provide an alternative avenue. We're going to respect their desires and needs when it comes to the content that they deem appropriate for their child, and we're going to work with them through that process. I think this process, or this practice that is going to be moved forward by approving this policy, is going to probably address those concerns.
You're saying if you look at the process that you actually write up for
Say that
this?
again?
So if we look at the actual, because you're going to create some documents with the detailed process. So you're saying once we look at the detailed process, it'll probably address everything that we're talking about here?
Yeah, and we can, and much of it is in the bullets. They're not in the same terminology that we're going to use, but it talks pretty specifically in the policy about the practice, the 30-day notice, making sure parents know exactly what is sexually explicit, make sure they know what avenue they have to explore if they would not like their child to participate in that activity. Much of that is described in those bullets there, but we'll also make it our own and do it the King George way.
Can I
Mr. Bush?
share? So I was just looking at something here, Virginia Board of Education, and I think you referred to some of this, Ms. Hawk, has approved the Family Life Education Board of Education guidelines and standards. Anyway, let me read this. This is from a couple of years ago, and I believe it's still in force. Virginia standards for family life education provide a comprehensive sequential K-12 curriculum. They include age-appropriate instruction in family living and community relationships, abstinence education, the value of postponing sexual activity, the benefits of adoption as a positive choice in the event of unwanted pregnancy, sexual activities, human reproduction. Instruction is designed to promote parental involvement, foster positive self-concepts, and provide mechanisms for coping with peer pressure and the stresses of modern living according to the students' developmental stages and abilities. And here's the last sentence, which I think is what we've been talking about. Parents have the right to review the complete family life curricula, including all supplemental materials used in any family life education program. Obviously, they see that, they could opt out. So they, have the right. I think what we're saying in all of this is that the curricula to be used by the teachers is going to be available for parents to review. And I think we should encourage parents to do that.
I agree.
I agree.
Especially, when you see even family life education, if I saw that, probably it's okay, but that might be something as I received it from that teacher, I'd probably want to read it because that could be some questionable things I might not agree with. Probably not, but it could.
But it also could be helpful
Of
to
course,
the parent in terms of establishing
Exactly.
conversation
Yep.
guidelines to speak with their children.
I think the question is age appropriate.
Age appropriate.
Who determines that? And I think that's maybe what we didn't say much about that, but who determines that? And at this point, obviously it has to be the teachers, but the parents need to have input about that because that would vary all over, like you said, Dr. Boyd.
Mhm. And so I believe, Dr. Boyd, the intent was for these policies to be in place the beginning of the calendar year, correct? Wasn't that
Yes,
that
would
was
be
a
the-
requirement, right? Or
Yes,
was
that is
expectation?
correct. That is a requirement.
Yes.
You're right.
So we do need to adopt a policy this evening so that can be put into place, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, okay,
And that was the governor's requirement.
correct. So that being said, I would ask if anyone would like to make a motion to adopt the policy manual update as it was presented originally.
Just, Mr. Rolls, I think that we've had this conversation, and I think most of your concerns, sometimes I think it's dangerous to get too explicit, too detailed. We get so detailed, then it's all of a sudden, well, we've left off some details. I think by using that word sexually explicit, even though it's not detailed enough, it's still broad enough it can cover a lot, which allows parents to make the decision. I think if we start defining that even more, we might even get into a little bit of trouble. So I guess I'm agreeing that Dr. Boyd, I think, has the right idea, in my opinion, and I think he pretty much agrees with what we've been talking about to make sure that it's enforceable.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the policy is specific to sexually explicit material, but the practice that we've created is going to be the engine or the avenue that we can use to address many of the concerns that we've discussed this evening that some of our parents have in the community.
Madam Chair, I will move that we adopt the policy as presented, IIA and IIAB.
We already adopted IIAB, so
Right,
just IIA,
right. It's
just the 2A.
just the first one. We already approved the other one.
we did, without changes. So yes, I move that we approve the policy manual update of IIA.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just add that I know we do need to approve something tonight. And I appreciate that, and Dr. Boyd, you're saying that the procedures will address these concerns. I do think it's most appropriate that we have that covered in the policy as well. We're not necessarily going to go into terrible detail, but just to communicate that we do recognize the need to be sensitive to the community's values, and that it's not just, that could come well before sexually explicit. But, you know, it's something, there's a lot of interlocking policies here that it'll be interesting to look at and look at the procedures when it comes out. You know, it's probably something we could come back to. But yeah, for now, I'll say I think the consensus seems to be that this is what we need to do at this point. So
I do think that's what, excuse me, Madam Chair, I do think that's what the governor kind of want. You know, his reaction to all this is to have the parents be more involved in decision making. And I think that this accomplishes that, which also I think allows for some parts of the community are going to draw that line in a different place than other parts. By giving the parents the option to be able to opt out or see alternative materials, I think will alleviate that.
Ms. Hawk, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think we need to remember that King George County has traditionally been sensitive to parental input. Over the many superintendents that I have worked with, I have not worked with any single superintendent since 1991 that has not absolutely listened to parental input, worked with staff, worked with supplementary materials. Even in the 80s, our supplementary materials were displayed in Smoot Library. Every single curriculum. The textbooks have been in Smoot Library. They have been in the wherever the school board was located, that's where they traveled to. And that includes Ralph Bunch and Rivercombe here for a while. And the point is, I think that we've worked very hard to make sure the policies include parents in all of the committees. The parents we listen to input, and we need to continue to listen to input of all parents. Thank you.
Any further debate? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. All right, we'll move on to our committee reports. Mr. Bush, do you have any committee reports this evening?
No, I do not.
Ms. Hawk?
Yes, the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School Committee met several weeks ago now and had adopted not only the budget, but discussion about increasing staff. One of the really exciting pieces about the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School is the addition of a counselor to look at workforce opportunities, apprenticeships, ways to do independent study. He's a wonderful young man who has really connected with the students in such an exciting way. Jason Strong is the new director. He has exciting plans for the Governor's School, looking at more field trips, more hands-on, more research-based activities, and to increase the participation of all students and increase the opportunities. We've been very fortunate to be able to take advantage of both Governor's Schools, the Commonwealth Governor's School, as well as Chesapeake Bay. And our students have benefited in so many ways. So, and I think we can look forward to more exciting things with Chesapeake Bay.
Thank you, Ms. Hawk. Mr. Rolls, any committee reports?
No, not at this time.
Okay, I don't have any this evening either. All right, Dr. Boyd, do you have a superintendent's report this evening?
Yes, just quickly, this is the first opportunity that we've had. I wanted to recognize our amazingly talented football team that lost a very close game in the regional championship. Most people said that that was the state championship. Two best teams played that day, and we lost in overtime. So I did want to take this opportunity publicly to recognize both our football team that had an amazing season and our volleyball team had a most amazing season. So I wanted to recognize those. And just a bit of information too, as we come to the end of the semester already. The end of the first semester is over on the 16th. And we've got some multiple report card dates for different reasons that I want to make sure everybody is aware of. Keep in mind, you can always take a look on PowerSchool and check grades anytime you'd like. But for high school students, the report card dates or the end of the semester is on the 16th. So if you have a high school student at home right now, take care of them. They're getting ready for SOLs and finals and culminating activities and everything else that they do right before the end of the semester in the final 9 days. For grades 3 through 8, the report card date will be the 4th when we come back from winter break. And then finally, the report card date for our K2 students is the 13th of January. Those are standards-based report cards. They require a lot of input. So they will be ready for parents' viewings on the 13th of January. So that's my report, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Boyd. All right, we will wrap up with our board comment this evening. So over to our student reps. Mr. Rosner, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Dr. Boyd, you stole my my reports, but I guess I could contextualize the volleyball team a little bit. Their season was actually pretty historic. This was the farthest any volleyball team ever in King George High School history to go as far as they have in their run to a state championship. So we would like to congratulate them on such an astounding season they have. Over Thanksgiving break, King George High School hosted a blood drive, which saw kids donating blood, or students donating blood, as well as volunteering. So it's nice to see students giving back to their community in such a positive way as a blood drive. Also, something that Ms. Hawk has encouraged me to do is start giving history facts. So I guess in light of the swift approach to the end of the semester, one thing that I feel is kind of interesting is the Declaration of Independence from its start to its submission to the Congress, to the Continental Congress. It took 17 days. John Adams claims that the first draft was written by Jefferson in 2 days. Well, it's not entirely accurate, but gives you some context how quick it was. But something that is pretty important is there was 460 words deleted from that draft after it was to the declaration that we know today. And I kind of, the exigence of that is, again, the swift ending in light of the test and all the projects that might be coming at this time. Just to let students know that you may not be perfect. The Declaration of Independence obviously wasn't perfect when it was submitted, having so many words deleted. So just be proud of yourself for completing your first semester if you're a freshman, or your last semester if you're a senior. Just be proud of your accomplishments no matter what's the outcome. That's all for me.
That's an excellent perspective. Thank you. Mr. Archer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to start, I wanted to give a continuation of last report of the Minute Madness for our veterans. I wanted to say I'm pleased to say that we met our goal of $3,000 among the students and the staff for our veterans. So I wanted to commend not only the students, but also the teachers who gave so much for the people who have already served us. Secondly, I wanted to say, I wanted to give a report on Spirit Days that we've had. So we had one Spirit Day, or one Spirit Week, the week before Thanksgiving break. And there was tremendous participation. And I wanted to say that it is great that we're doing these things and getting to show all of these things that we should be recognizing. Like, I believe one was Purple Out for World Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, which happened to be November. I don't remember any others off the top of my head, but we have one. We have a spirit, I don't want to call it week, but for all of the days in December, we have some kind of different spirit wear that we are pushing for students and teachers to wear. And in the 3 days that we've had it so far, there was great participation. There was very, very positive feedback about this. So I'm glad that we're getting to show our spirit as a school. Also, last week at our school, we had a $15 book fair gift card giveaway where all the students who had perfect attendance in the month of November were put onto a wheel, and the wheel was spun for this gift card. And I wanted to say that it is great that we're doing these things for our students to show that we are appreciative of them showing up every day and doing what we are expecting them to do. So, and as a final note, I wanted to say that the concert season for musicians has begun. So I know that the high school concert was last Thursday. I did not get to attend that, but I have heard very positive feedback from that. There is, I believe it was mentioned earlier, there's the band and chorus concerts for the King George Elementary School going on tonight. Tomorrow's the middle school. Wednesday's Potomac, and Thursday is Sealston. And I believe there are other concerts the week after. But I wanted to say that if you would like to show up at these, I will personally be in the middle school band and chorus concerts. And I wanted to say that it is important to recognize the hard work that these students put in, and I can speak from experience there. So that is all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Archer. What instrument do you play?
I play the clarinet.
I played the clarinet. Very good.
Exactly what I was going to ask is what instrument. My wife played clarinet also.
All right. Thank you both. Hopefully your semesters will wrap up well and you enjoy your holidays. So thank you for all that you brought and shared with us this year. It's much appreciated. Mr. Bush.
All right. First of all, thank you to Potomac Garden Club. That was very good. There sure was a lot of them. That's wonderful to see such good participation. And also for the holiday card winners. That's great. The 2 cards, and to see again so many people submitting different cards. That's great. I wanted to especially thank, she's not here, Dr. Cartwright, for the year that I've worked with her. She's been very professional. She's been very cooperative and also respectful. And I just appreciate her very much. And so I know that she wasn't here tonight, which I was sad to see that she wasn't here for me to say this in person to her, but hopefully she's listening. But thank you to Ms. Cartwright for her service and her professionalism and for her respect. And congratulations to Ms. Kathy Hoover. And so glad to have you. I visited with her a little bit the other day, and I'm looking forward to working with her this coming year. Congratulations. I also wanted to thank the various teachers for the Teacher of the Year, Ms. Brown, Mr. Callahan, Ms. Ashton, and Ms. Jenkins, Ms. Morris, and Mrs. Yergi. And also for the Teacher of the Year, Ms. Jennifer Jenkins. Congratulations for that. That was fantastic. Also, the one who made the comment at the beginning that there was no flag in Sealston, I'm sure we're going to deal with that. Obviously, being two of us are veterans on the board here, and that's a really big deal. And so, and obviously it's a big deal to everybody. I don't mean to diminish anybody else, but it is important. And I thank that person. I can't remember his name right now, but I thank him for making that comment.
Mr. Crook.
Mr. Crook. Thank you, Mr. Crook, if he's listening, for pointing that out for us. And that is all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Hawk?
I will try to keep this to a minimum because
Your mic.
I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. I want to keep this to a minimum so that we can move on and let everybody go home. The first thing I have to say is that the parents of these two boys, I have adopted them. They are officially now my boys, my young men. And I just can't tell you how exciting it is to see them participate so effectively. You know, they're doing their work at school, among their colleagues, and I so appreciate you representing the band. That the voice of the band and chorus doesn't always get heard, so thank you. And your comments for the high school have been so both specific and general, and we really, you're gonna make a fine attorney, yes, or whatever you choose to do. I mean, you could go into social work and be excellent, you know.
Or be a teacher.
Or be an educator, that's right. And what our goal is to make these opportunities that developed these young men into the fine individuals. We need to have these available to every child in King George. And that's our focus. And, you know, that's the one thing we all on this board agree on, is that our focus is for the students. And whether they're 3 or 21, because we educate all the way through that age group. We're proud of you guys, and you're giving hope to those of us in the world who said, oh, geez. Well, now we know we have something to look forward to. The other thing is I wanted to say similarly that we have enjoyed working with Dr. Cutright. She came to us at a rough time. She integrated very quickly. She came on board. She spoke our language and helped us understand a lot from her perspective. So we really appreciate her time and effort. And again, similarly, we want to say thank you to Ms. Hoover for stepping up and being available to represent your community. It's a big deal, and it takes time and effort. So we look forward to working with you. I want to remind folks that we'll be celebrating a number of very special holidays in the next season, in the next few weeks. So please enjoy all forms of renewal and relaxation, and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawk. Mr. Rolls?
So appreciate having the gardening club come and hearing them talk about they're planting things for the wildlife. I do that too, although unintentionally. They come and help themselves a lot to my fruit trees, and so I need to figure out how to stop doing that, but I'm glad that they enjoy doing that. And then also, it was great to see the holiday cards. I'm glad that they spent time doing that. I haven't opened my card yet to see which one I got, but if it's a fox, my youngest daughter would be delighted to have it. She loves everything foxes. If it's the mountain scene, I'm a sucker for landscapes, so I'll enjoy that myself. So appreciate all the children for participating in that. Then I'll also say thank you to Dr. Cutright for stepping up and serving for that year plus. and serving the community in that way. It's a pleasure to serve with her. And I also want to congratulate King George on having the fastest acting superintendent in Virginia. And how do I know that? It's because we were at the VSBA conference last month, and Ms. Gonzalez, myself, and Dr. Boyd all ran. I think that's the most participation we've had yet at the 5K at the conference so far. Dr. Boyd won the whole thing. I could not even come close to keeping up. Mrs. Gonzalez and he were definitely the most, I don't know what the word is, but
I believe it was
Spirit.
individual and team spirit awards that we received. So
there you go.
dressing like foxes.
I missed the memo. I'll be more spirited next year and bring my costume, fox costume as well. And then I also want to say a big welcome to Ms. Hoover as well. Welcome to the board. We'll enjoy serving with you, I'm sure, as well. And that's all I have for right now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rolls. So I was also going to comment on the 5K results at the VSBA annual convention. Yes, so I won't repeat, but yes, Dr. Boyd is speedy on his feet, has bright yellow shoes. I think it was the hat and the tail that gave him more aerodynamics. Anyway, but yes, we got the Team Spirit Award for we were dressed in fox apparel. And also the individual best spirits. So that was kind of fun. Maybe next year I'll actually break the face paint out to go with the rest of the fox accoutrements. So anyway, it was a good time. And in addition to that, the annual convention is always a good opportunity to chat with other school board members and get to know our colleagues as our board. Spend some time with Ms. Hoover. That was very enjoyable getting to know her. So in all regards, it was a successful event yet again. I enjoyed the opportunity last week, I believe. I've lost track of time. Last week was Thanksgiving. No, it wasn't. Anyway, last week I was invited to speak with one of our Cub Scout packs. They were doing one of their badges and they were supposed to talk to an elected official, a local elected official. So I got to go chat with them about what it was like to be a school board member. And there were a lot of aspiring presidents of the United States in the crowd. And they had a lot to say about school lunches. So there you have it. Apparently that's a theme. So there you go. I enjoyed the Polar Fest put on at Potomac Elementary School last Friday. Always a hit, the community engagement events that they put together. School was like decked out to the nines with all kinds of wintry scenes and fireplaces and photo ops and food and snacks for the kids. And it's just great to see all the teachers that have gone out of their way to put additional effort into making that a special event for the community. And I know the kids really enjoy it. So my son was still gnawing on hot air balloon or balloon animal remnants in the car on the way here as they were popping on the way home. So anyway, so thank you to all the staff that helped make that possible. I also last Friday had the opportunity to meet with the Y Street Youth and learn about their Rev Your Bev campaign in our high school. So Y Street Youth is an organization established by the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth, which I learned is funded with money from the Master Tobacco Settlement, which is interesting. That is how Virginia chooses to use that funding, to educate youth, which I thought was pretty outstanding. So Y Street Youth empowers youth to promote making nutritious and tobacco-free choices in their lives. And so in January, they will be coming to us with the proposed update to our student wellness policy. And the proposed update will include proposing that King George County Schools recognize water as an essential nutrient and encouraging students, staff, teachers, and administrators to model positive hydration behaviors. It'll do things like recommend that we offer water in the cafeteria during lunch and during breakfast and lunch and in other high traffic areas such as the gym, outdoor activity spaces, faculty lounges, and also allow students to carry water bottles throughout the day. If we adopt the policy manual update, one of the benefits is that they will provide 1,000 double-walled stainless steel water bottles to our schools, which is pretty slick. I did ask, if I were to back up for a minute, when they emphasize making nutritious and tobacco-free choices, I did ask them about marijuana education, since that's a topic that's come up, right? We talk about how effective the education campaign against tobacco use has been. And they noted that they have not yet received funding from the General Assembly to educate youth on cannabis. So one can be hopeful that that will come in the future. They disperse 3-year grants to schools and youth-serving organizations to provide evidence-based tobacco, nicotine, and vaping prevention or cessation instruction directly to Virginia youth. And every year, their programs reach about 40,000 youth statewide in settings like public schools, preschools, houses of faith, community centers, and after-school programs. So we at King George are currently not a grantee, but their next RFP for grants will go out in the 2023-2024 timeframe. So maybe there's an opportunity there for us to look into some grants. I also want to thank Dr. Cutright, who's unfortunately not able to be here with us this evening, for her service on the board the past year. It was certainly an honor getting to work with her. And congratulations, Ms. Hoover, on your election. We certainly look forward to working with you in the coming year. And lastly, I just want to extend a congratulations and thank you to all of our staff for providing our students with a meaningful and engaging first semester. And I hope that you all thoroughly enjoy your much deserved holiday breaks. So be safe, stay warm in case it stays cold, but you never know in Virginia. So, all right. So without further ado, do we have a motion for closed session? We do have an
Pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3711.8.1, for the purpose of discussion, consideration of prospective candidates for employment, assignment of substitutes, stipends, resignations, terminations, and retirements of employees of the school board, and for the discussion of the proposed superintendent's contract, I move that we enter closed session.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in closed session. motion to return to open session?
Hold on, I gotta find it. I've got it right here. All right, I move that King George County School Board return to open session and certify that pursuant to State Code 2.2-3712.d, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the public body.
Second, certify.
Certify.
I certify as well.
Certify.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. We're now in open session. Do we have a motion to approve personnel as presented?
I move that we approve personnel as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now adjourned.